Okay, welcome to week 5 of CS220 Data Management and Security. A couple things this week. Want to go over, I guess, how we're tracking on the syllabus, basically where we're at, and kind of what the next couple weeks. Because we're actually, this is the last. We're entering the last days of July, so we're heading into August. So, things are going to be wrapping up um, pretty quickly. Things will be moving along pretty quickly. Let's take a quick look at the schedule. So we'll look at that. As I said, we are now on week 5, which is July 29th. Um, from a lectures perspective, uh, recorded lectures, data storage and structures, and database security. All right, and as you recall, these can be found. Um, Numbers 3 and 4, basically, it's going to be sections 3 and 4. Okay, is what we're going to be looking at this week. So the matching. So these are the recorded lectures, sections 3 and 4, and then the decks associated with that are down, further in their individual topics. Okay, so that's where we're at. Schedule wise, we are. Um, is the 29th. So we have next week. All right. Where we last two topic areas we're going to cover is database administration, database vulnerabilities, and then on the 12th is when we have the final exam scheduled. Right. So the big things we have right now coming up are prep for the final exam. I'm going to, once again, similar to what I did with the midterm or exam one. I'm going to post a study guide, covering the major topics that you want to be comfortable with going into the final. So I'll be putting those up uh, probably next week, and I think we'll have a recorded lecture around that as well, just to walk through um, the content along with that. Okay. The other big thing we're tracking along with, I want to spend a couple minutes going through this. Um, is the lab exercises. So as we said, we basically are on track right now. We're doing 3 lab exercises. All right. So the first one, technically you could say 4, but the first 1/2 were around the installation of MySQL on your machine, and then the definition of all of the tables. All right. So that was, if we take a look on our class site here, the the lab exercises are actually, you can find them under the MySQL documentation section here. All right. I made a couple changes on this from the in-person class because we're doing this a little bit differently. Um, so these are right now our 3 lab exercises. So we've got lab 1, which is we had talked about last week, which is defining the tables in the database. Number 1, assuming we have a database, we can then define the tables in the database. And, as we had looked at that, the full scripts, the exercise is really around, creating the database, logging, creating a sales database, um, you know, using this command here, create database sales, and then going through, and then for each one of these, address table, um, city table, country table, customer table, basically executing the script that we've got defined. So this is the SQL commands. This is basically a summary of what we talked about last week. These are the SQL commands we use to create the tables. All right. So part of what we're doing is we're basically defining the rules. All right. This is a table that has this many fields in it. These are what the fields are called. These are what the fields look like. These are the rules associated with what you can or cannot put into into a particular field in a table. So that's all around the definition. So all of that stuff, the expectation right now is we're following this in a particular sequence. So expectation right now for lab number 2 is that we have successfully completed lab number 1. If you try to do number 2 without completing lab number 1, what you will find is you will get you will try to execute the scripts, and what we will get back is a message saying, unable to find that table. It doesn't exist. And the reason it doesn't exist is because you have not executed all of the scripts in here. Right? So the expectation, the assumption is we complete everything in exercise 1. And if you go through, you have a list of all of the tables that make up this database. Right, all the tables that we have out there. Right? So week 2, or lab number 2, what we're going to be doing is loading data into these tables. So that when we define the rules, all we're doing is we're defining the schema. We're defining the rules, but there's no data in it. All right, so they're empty. You configure them, and they are in effect just a bunch of rules saying this is what this is what the thing should look like. Now, in this second part of the lab exercise, what we will be doing is loading the data or inserting the data. All right. So what we use in this case is an SQL command called insert. All right. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at that. We'll take a look at our kind of what we're doing here. All right. So what we want to do for lab 2 is click the lab 2, MySQL lab 2, load data into tables. All right. Now, one of the things that's a little tricky about this, all right, one of the things we ran into this a bit in the fall. So I've made some adjustments here to try to make this thing a little bit more straightforward. The original we had written this up. We wrote this up in Microsoft Word, and with the idea being that we would look to cut and paste. Basically, we would have all of the scripts. We predefine all of the scripts, and then what we would do is we would install the scripts into the. We would use the scripts and execute the scripts. The problem we run into, though, sometimes when we do this, is that the formatting of data in Word does not necessarily. A lot of times, what will happen is it will put. I guess the best way is like control characters, things that are not visible on the screen but are there. And one of the things we ran into quite a bit back in the fall was when we went to try to copy and move data, from the lab exercise and execute it inside the MySQL workbench here. Well, what happened would be you would get syntax errors, all right, and it would be because the data would be translated differently as we move from one to the other. So to give you an example, I'm going to actually correct this in here, but I just wanted to kind of give you an example of this. This is the script. What I did was I moved it from Word and translated it from Word into just a text document. All right. But one of the things you'll see, when we take a look here, number 7, when we insert into the country code. So the first one we do is we're going to do country code. If you take a look here, so Afghanistan, Australia, Austria, Iraq. When we get to Japan, one of the things that we ran into is that instead of translating the single quote into a single quote, what it actually did is it translated the single quote into a question mark. It's basically a translation. It basically was a character quirk of trying to copy something from Word into text. Because when we're working with, in the workbench, the data we're working with is really just text data. All right. Whereas when we're in a word processor, there's a lot of other things that are kind of going on. So one of the things I ran into, and what I've gone back and have made this, actually why I've made these adjustments on this, is that, for example, we see, instead of this being um, Japan with um, a single quote, it actually shows up as Japan, with a question mark, which is going to create a syntax error. All right, so actually, what you would see, we'll just do a copy. So Control C. If I go to the workbench and say, for example, I want to copy the script here, what we're going to see is all of a sudden, 7 and 8, Japan and Miramar, show up incorrect. All right. So what has to happen is you actually have to go back. So I'm gonna correct it back into the script. So we will not run into that. But it's one of those things, especially when you're going from platform to platform, or going from one type of application to another type of application. One of these things we will see from time to time is that it doesn't automatically translate the way we would want it to translate. Now, what happens is when I corrected that, and what will happen is the workbench is smart enough to know that the format, it sees these characters, it recognizes, gee, that's not a correct syntax, so you'll get an error. You won't be able to actually execute this. You'll actually get an error. Now, I've gone back and I've verified all of these scripts. All right, so we should be, okay. And actually, what will happen is we'll do an example here. I'm going to try to execute this. I've successfully executed this previously. So what we will get is an error message saying, I've got duplicate entries out here for the primary key, because I've already have inserted, there's already an Afghanistan entry in the table. So for example, if I do we'll execute another command, select star from country, which translates to show me everything, all the entries that are in the country table. And we execute this, highlight it, execute it. What we'll see is we already have all the entries are already out there. The data is already out there, and we installed it. We had inserted it previously. All right. So the exercise itself, if we take a look at the exercise itself is really an exercise in going through, making, we want to make sure we've got all the tables created. Then we're going to go through and just simply copy these scripts, one table at a time, into the MySQL workbench. All right. Highlighting it. So it's going to execute everything it's highlighted. And then click the execute command, and it will insert everything. All right. If the table's not, if you didn't correctly create the tables in step 1, it's going to fail. All right. So that's but it will also give you a clue down here with the error code of, well, kind of what happened, why did it fail. So it doesn't, it tells you, gives you some indication of what's going on with it. So it's not you're not totally flying blind on this. All right. So the exercise itself we have. So we go through lab 2. We have the country table, the city table, addresses, store table, staff table, customer table, the inventory table, and then we have a couple of exercises here where we're basically manually doing putting entries into the order table. Ordinarily, what will happen in real life would be we will create all of these other tables, and then we have an application that will create an order. We're kind of hot wiring this, so we're executing the insert commands that put all of that data into this. So we're just it's kind of a shortcut method, but we're entering data into the order table. So we've got a couple orders we're putting in here, and we're also entering some information, some data into the payment tables. All right. So basically, that would be the order would be the process through which somebody orders something. In the case here, order an olive oil or 3 coffees or 5 coffees, so on and so forth. Payments are where somebody actually pays for something. So we're basically what we're doing with this exercise here is we're just doing the inserts themselves, and the inserts are all they're all laid out here. I've actually gone back and I've made it, and I've done some double checking on this to make sure that the data in it's in these tables are that are in the SQL commands are correct. So I've done some double and triple checking. That's not to say that there's not a potential syntax error out there. If you run into problems, just send me an email. We'll kind of walk through it. It should be pretty good right now. I think I've done some. I have to do a couple cleanups on this to make sure that it's we're copacetic, but it should be in pretty good shape. All right. So that's lab exercise 2. Lab exercise 3, which is what we'll present next week, we're going to focus on the select statements, which is the commands we use to get data, to extract data out of a relational database. So it's the queries, basically the question, we present to the database management system to say we want to find all data that looks like this. And the way I'm going to construct that is I'm going to do the first 10. I think we're going to do similar to what we've been doing with the SQL exercises. Basically, those are going to be kind of a cut and paste. I'll give you an example. All right. The last 5, I'm going to give them as a template. Basically, I'm going to kind of put it in the form of a question with the expectation that you could complete the SQL statement itself. Basically, translate the request into SQL command structure that we can execute and bring the result set back. All right, so that's really what that's kind of what we're kind of what our exercise is for this week. All right, and also to put us on track for where we're going to be at next week. For submitting, basically what I want to try to get to submit would be probably in this case, what we'll want to do is we will want to go into our sales. So we have our sales database here. So we'll do a quick refresh on this. We have our sales database here. All right. And what I'd like to get would be a list of simply a display. So what happens is when we create the tables, we'll have a list of all of the tables here. All right. So after we load the tables, we'll want to take a look at what the tables look like. All right, the content of the tables. All right, so the way we would do that is this select statement. So like right now I did a select star from country. So for each table, what I'd like to do is say just execute a select star from, and then the table name. So we'll say address. All right, highlight it, execute it, and it'll bring the results back here. All right, and what I just want to get is, for each table that's out here. Okay, so for each of these tables that we execute the insert commands for, once you're done, basically write, just simply write a command, this select star from whatever the table name is, semicolon, execute that, and then get a screenshot of the result grid. All right, so it should look something like this, and then cut and paste that into a Word document, and then submit the Word document on the Moodle site. Just to show you, on the Moodle site, the submissions, we had some problems with this. Some folks had reached out to me, and I had to do some checking with the dates. So a couple things when we had set, when these had been copied over, the dates did not get set properly. So I've reset the dates for the three assignments. So you should be able to, as we said, for the first lab assignment, what I'd like to get is, the list of all the tables defined, basically just a list of everything out there. That's like a single screenshot of that. For lab exercise 2, I want to get a screenshot of what you get after we do the select statement, after you say select star from table. So there'd be like one screen, you should see like one screenshot, a Word document with one screenshot per table. All right. And then lab 3, we'll talk about what we'll want to show for lab 3. All right. So that's so that's basically where we are at. As I said, we're starting to home in on the home stretch. If you have problems with, you still run into any sort of technical problems with the MySQL stuff, because it is a little bit different. There's a little, usually this is the type of thing that we focus on hands-on exercises in the class. So we've made some adjustments on this to be able to, hopefully capture the important parts, so you get to see what these things look like and have some opportunity to be able to execute them. Trying to simplify this thing down so we can work with this, but there's still the possibility that we can run into some issues, and we'll just have to be adaptable and flexible as we go. So that's what I have for right now. As I said, any problems or questions, just send me an email or send me a text, and we can work our way through it. All right, so hang in there. Now we're just coming into a final approach here. So all right, so hang in there, and we'll continue to move this thing forward. All right, I'll talk to you guys real soon. Take care. Bye bye now.